Embarrassing. That's the one word that I'm choosing to use that I do believe summarizes Jason Kenney's plea to Canada on behalf of Alberta. Welcome to Nadine Wellwood, Frankly Speaking. So Premier Kenney has just sent out a video of him pleading with Canada on behalf of Alberta and Albertans to get off the neck of the oil and gas industry here and allow business as usual. I don't understand. When the UCP was elected in Alberta, Jason Kenney, in his tough talk, when he was going around the province, I thought you knew when you got into that position that your pleas would fall upon deaf ears. I didn't think that there was any question about that matter whatsoever. And here we are 18 months later with our premier down on bended knee begging and pleading for mercy from the federal government. Talk, talk, talk. You can talk all you want until there is some consequences to the actions that are being taken and the injustices that are being committed, crimes against Alberta, until Alberta, you, Mr. Kenney, actually lay out some substantial consequences to their actions, Trudeau is not going to do anything. Why? Because he doesn't have to. He's quite willing to listen to you plead and cry. What great satisfaction I'm sure he's taking in it. So I think you deserve it, Alberta. I think Albertans deserve to see you take action. Stop with the talk. So some of the things that Mr. Kenney, words that he chose to use, looking for sympathy. Albertans aren't looking for sympathy. He appreciates the efforts made by the federal government these last 7 months. What efforts have they made in the last 7 months? Stop with the platitudes. Stop trying to play nice with somebody who really doesn't care what you think. Compares the potential loss of the 2,000 jobs of Suncor, because this is where this is coming from. Alberta is getting hit yet again. Suncor is potentially laying off 2,000 people, and he does do a good comparison of the jobs respectively in the automotive sector, the manufacturing sector in Ontario. This would be the equivalent of, I do believe he said 8,000 and 4,000 jobs in those sectors respectively. But again, Ontario doesn't care what happens in Alberta. As a matter of fact, economically, we are diabolically opposed. Alberta is an oil and gas mining resources sector. We're more tightly tied to the US dollar than anywhere else in Canada. Ontario, when Alberta is doing well, is usually, unfortunately, at the other end of that spectrum and is suffering slightly because manufacturing automotive benefits from a weak Canadian dollar. Albertans do not. So Ontario, let's be clear, they really, most people, because we are so far apart in so many ways and so culturally very different, so economically very different, one does not understand the needs and the suffering of the other. So he's declaring an economic emergency. I'm like, just now. We've been headed down this path for a long, long time. And I'm going, we're just now getting around to declaring an economic emergency. You know, the begging and the pleading, it's an embarrassment to Alberta. It's an embarrassment to you, Mr. Kenney. And more importantly, please do not think you're representing Albertans. Albertans do not want you on bended knee asking and begging and pleading with the federal government. They want to see you take some tough action. Claims we need fiscal fairness, and he mentions the equalization payment. Well, until Alberta, you, Mr. Premier, do what is required, and the first thing you need to do, and this is one thing that never even came up in your proposal when you talked about the Fair Deal panel. You talked about all these great things you were going to do, but the one thing you did not discuss was how you were going to pay for them. Until we as Albertans control our own revenues, there is nothing you are going to do about equalization. And it's a very simple fact. If you don't control your own money, we have no leverage to even negotiate. We're not even going to be taken seriously at a negotiation table. Why? Because there is no consequences. We have no teeth. Right now, we're all bark. What you need to do is put some teeth behind that. First step that we should be taking right now is setting up our own collection agency here in Alberta, collect our own revenues, and force the federal government to ask for the money that they seem to think that they own and or deserve. Well, if they've got to send an invoice, then you have some power to negotiate as to whether or not you choose to pay and how much you choose to pay in equalization payments. My 2 cents worth. A desperate man pleading with a leader in this country who has no regard for Alberta. And again, what are the consequences of him ignoring our pleas? Absolutely nothing. So one of the things that sparked this was actually the Suncor. And Kenney did mention that as a result of the federal government, and he did quote, overstepping provincial jurisdiction to conduct a review, a C69 review, and Suncor has fears that this could turn into a 10-year review, which it likely could, especially noting the Liberal government and how they've handled things thus far. C69, C48, all of this comes back to the federal government's desire to fall into line with the United Nations. And part of that is the Paris Climate Accord. And Mr. Kenney, I do believe last year this time we had a federal election in which there was one party who chose to stand out and say that the Paris Climate Accord was not good for Canada and it wasn't good for Canadians and it was going to stand up for the oil and gas industry and fight. And you, in your knowledge and wisdom, had all of your MLAs stand up and say, we are going to support the Conservative Party of Canada. Well, congratulations, because I have, even in a paper today, dated September 30th, Peter Guthrie, MLA, Airdrie Cochrane, Paris Climate Accord kills jobs. And yet, the Conservative Party of Canada, under Aaron O'Toole, still supports the Paris Climate Accord. This is not making any sense. So, you support the Conservative Party of Canada, who supports the Paris Climate Accord, which your own MLAs openly admit here kills jobs, hurts Alberta, hurts Canada, and yet you openly support this. So I'm looking at everything today and I'm going, talk is cheap, sir. It is time for you to lay out a plan of action that you are going to take and to start doing something. I think Albertans deserve at least that. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please be sure to click the like button, share. If you've never clicked the bell, please do so. If you've clicked the bell in the past, sometimes things happen with conservative views. You may need to have to re-click it a few times. Please do so. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye now.